Naomi is a connector, engagement specialist, and strategist and non-executive director in the environmental NGO space with a strong track record of building coalitions for change. As a trained environmental and social scientist, her multidisciplinary approach to synthesizing insights supports her ability to design, implement innovative solutions. She's currently working on coordinating the delivery of a 10-year conservation strategy at the City of Gold Coast, and her most recent role was innovating strategies to scale up community-based fisheries management in the Pacific Ocean. So thanks so much for joining us today, Naomi.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Romana, for that introduction and also the invitation to provide a presentation. Thank you for how to say the acronym. I was like, yeah, how do you say women in earth and environmental sciences in Australasia? So thank you for that because some acronyms are quite hard. For this presentation, yeah, when Romana reached out to me, I was like, sure. And then I didn't really know what my life would look like at this time of year. And I know it's a very busy time for everyone to do these extra bits. But I said yes straight away because this is, environmental science, earth science is something that's always been close to my heart, being, I guess, primarily trained as an environmental scientist, but then went down a different pathway. And yeah, when we've been discussing about this seminar, the idea was I was just going to share some stories about my experiences in building coalitions of change. And it links with this year's theme for World Ocean Day, which is acts of empowerment. So before I get into what I'll be sharing in a moment, I just want to take the opportunity to acknowledge our First Nations people. Where I'm presenting from is on the lands of the Kummamberi people, which is part of the Yugambeh language group. So it's quite a large area, the Yugambeh language group, which is from the Albert River all the way down to the Tweed River on the Gold Coast. And then it basically extends out to the Scenic Rim area as well. And I also want to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and also South Sea Islanders who might be on this call and listening back to this presentation. So thank you. So what I'll be sharing with you today is basically I've got 3 stories to share. And I think this really wraps up what I think is like those acts of empowerment. I think it's always empowerment really can come in lots of different shapes and forms. It can come at an individual level. It can come at a large coalition level, even at a national or international level as well. And I thought that particularly being a women's network, I'm going to be heavily leaning on some stories where I've been working with some incredible women throughout my career who have really uplifted me, mentored me on the way. And now I'm in a position where I am providing that support to people who are coming through as well. So the first story is really around being inspired. So it is about a story about turning up and inviting others with the sense and the learning in that story around the art of storytelling for change. Then the second story will be about inspiring others as I move through my career. It's about connecting change makers and also creating a leadership curriculum for people to learn and build their own individual capacity and capability to step into opportunities. And then there is the Act 3, which is around empowering many. And I think probably for many people who are in this call, if you're taking the time to invest and be part of groups like your network, we are actually in positions of power. And there's now an opportunity where it's important to invest in others. And I know this is what you do every day within your network. So just before I get into the nitty-gritties, I just thought I would just share a little bit about myself and my background, just for some context. Yeah, it's a pretty similar story to probably many people on this call. Growing up, loved nature, and it was a high school biology camp that encouraged me to study environmental science. So I did a Bachelor of Environmental Science at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. It was during that time that I got exposed to the movement of coast care, and land care on the Gold Coast. And that landed me, basically, it opened the door for me to have one of the best jobs I thought for that period of time. For about 5.5 years, I ran, basically, it's the coast care program on the Gold Coast. We called it beach care here at the time. After that, I then saw an opportunity and to really build a national network of young change makers for land care and also sustainable ag and other sectors to come together. And what I realized is that there was lots of incredible young people around, but they weren't necessarily connected and also had the confidence and the courage to really step in and really thrive in positions that they found themselves in. So I worked with a whole bunch of amazing, incredible people from around Australia, and we co-founded Intrepid Landcare, which is now, 10 years later. And I do have a story to share about that organization. My most recent role before I joined the City of Gold Coast in December last year is I was working as a regional strategy coordinator for an incredible organization called Sea Change for Good. Sea Change is the easiest way. And as part of this role, I was managing a large regional program across Melanesia, where I worked with ministries and local NGOs, big NGOs, networks, also a lot of universities, thinking about scaling up community-based fisheries management, and we were managing the information component. So we worked across Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Fiji, and Solomon Islands. It was a great experience. I got to do lots of traveling for those coastal people here on the call. Yeah, it was a very cool job. And then, I recently joined the City of Gold Coast. So now for the first time working within a government and within local government. I've just got a QR code here if you're interested to learn more about what we're doing around conservation on the Gold Coast. And I've now found myself being the coordinator for a 10-year strategy, which is really about transformational change for conservation on the Gold Coast. So that's a bit about me. Now I'm going to get into the first story. So the first story here is about my experiences at Friends of Federation Walk, which is at the Spit on the Gold Coast. And the next slide will just provide, some aerial photography so you can picture where it is. This story is really about being invited to volunteer through really by accident, bumping into one of my old school friends' mums at the supermarket. And at that time, had recently started studying environmental science at Griffith University. And she said, why don't you come along and do some tree planting and help out at the Coast Care group? Now, I just want to take a moment to share the story because it was a simple story that really paved my pathway. And it was during this first time ever volunteering in Coast Care where I was asking some of the older volunteers at the time. And this is a midweek Wednesday when we were watering thousands of seedlings during the drought period. A fun fact, we had access to the recycled water pipeline, which basically runs along the spit. So we really had endless amount of water. And so we were just watering for hours and hours. And I got chatting to some of the older volunteers. And I just asked them, like, why are you volunteering? There's 3 of us here, and there's 93 hectares of coastal dunes to restore. Why are you here? What motivates you to be here? And I think that's such an important question to ask when we move into new spaces to understand what really motivates people to actually be here and to turn up. And then there was one of the volunteers called Dave Hotman turned around and said to me, can you see that tree over there, Naomi? And I was like, yes. And he said, that's a coastal banksia. And it was in full bloom. It was beautiful. And he said, can you see that bird? And I was like, yes. And it was a blue-faced honey eater. And he said, I planted that tree and that's what I get to do out here. In my job, basically being a semi-retired builder, he builds homes also for people, but out there at the Spit, he was about creating habitat. I got connected to that story quite easily. One, it's very visual, but 2, I could see the direct change right in front of me around what I could actually do by turning up at the Spit and volunteering with this Coast Care group. I was so inspired by that story. So then I was like, all right, what else could I do then? And he said, why don't next time you invite some of your friends to come along? And I was like, sure. I went back the next day and I spoke to our first year advisor at Griffith University, Professor Catherine Pickering. I shared that exact story. And then she said, what you could do is email these lecturers and ask if you could have 5 minutes of their time before every lecture. And you could just share that story and encourage people to come along to this Coast Care group to volunteer. And so little did I know, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't even know what storytelling for change was. I literally just went along to all these different lectures and I shared that story. And out of that story, we ended up having a small group. It was 5 people to 10 people, whoever could turn up at the time. And we created, oh my God, it's the worst name now thinking, now work in branding and strategy. We called ourselves the Griffith University Science Maintenance Team because that's what we're doing. We're fixing all the grow bags, fertilizing and planting, and doing the boring stuff between the planting days. But it was a whole lot of fun. We had to learn how to connect hoses to pumps, and we did this and that, and we had some great morning tea, and we had really genuine connection with, I'd say, the older generation, the obvious volunteers that volunteer with land care and coast care. And that experience in itself really, one, it opened the door, but it opened the opportunity for me to be mentored by two incredible women while I was managing this student group. And this is also pre-Facebook. This was in like MySpace days. I might look young, but yeah, it really was quite some time ago now. And so it was at the time when then, and this is just for context and the location. And I thought, yeah, especially we've got some Geoscience Australia and geomorphologists probably on this call. You can see before and after for the spit. So it was redeveloped in the 1980s to put in the training walls and the sand bypass system and an artificial island to manage the navigational channel. And that whole section of green space there is 93 hectares. And that little bit of white sand down below, that square bit of sand towards the bottom, is actually an emergency sand stockpile for when the Gold Coast experiences extreme storms like we had with Tropical Cyclone Alfred just in March. But this is such a unique site, and we are so lucky to have on the Gold Coast an amazing community champion called Lynn Wright. And she's the one that has really advocated and the protection of the spit. So it's now a natural areas and managed by the city of Gold Coast. And they've been planting like hundreds of thousands of plants out there to bring back an endangered ecological vegetation community, the coastal little rainforest. So if you're ever on the Gold Coast, please take the time to go out and have a look because it's such a beautiful site, great place to hike and trail run and do all the things that you like to do. But I felt so lucky to be able to work alongside and be mentored by someone like Lynn Wright. And then at the same time, there was a city ranger called Jodie Clifford. And again, I actually now work at the City of Gold Coast and I see her around here from time to time and we just giggle and laugh about the good old days. And she would invite me to meetings and she would show me how to ID plants. And at the time, I really didn't know what and why she was doing it when you are like a student. But what I realized is that she was setting me up for a job. And that was when I got recruited after I finished my bachelor's to take on the beach care officer role for the Gold Coast. And I've always just been so fortunate for these two amazing women who obviously saw something in myself that I didn't know that I had. And I'll get to the last story for this talk. And it really is about using those positions of powers that we find ourselves in to really uplift each other. And of course, being a women's network, yeah, what a better opportunity to uplift our younger champions that are coming through. Plugging a lot of organizations throughout, too many QR codes, but I don't like website links and stuff in slides. I think because it's an online, so there's lots of QR codes to check them out. So what I learned from that experience, and these are the three key things. One is around that storytelling for change, using stories to influence. Yes, in data is very important, but data alone doesn't really shift people's mindsets. It's providing the context around data, which is what really inspires change. So those are, if you're not familiar with some of these terms, please look that up because these are the kind of definitely my go-to tools. I didn't know asset-based community development planning at the time. I learnt this during my master's when I did international community development. And asset-based community development is basically a framework I use every day. It's about meeting people where they are at now, connecting what people have to offer now to what is needed. So people might have time or they may not have time. People have passion. There's lots of tangible and intangible things that people can offer. And it's about matching that matching what people can offer and creating a genuine connection. And that also goes to networking. For me, it's not about transactional relationships. For me, it's always been around transformational, lasting relationships. That's probably why I'm here today. I remember meeting Romana like many years ago during our days volunteering for the Australian Coastal Society. And I think that's what's been so important. And particularly when you're working in the space of the environment, it's really around ensuring that, yes, we're not just having these transactional partnerships. There's that genuine transformational relationships that we want, because we don't know what will happen in another 10 or 20 years when we do a lot of for me now at the moment, I'm running a forum here on the Gold Coast at the end of this month, and it has been digging deep into some old contacts who have provided great leads for people to come and participate at this forum. So I never underestimate the power of networking, and that's definitely two things that I learned from Lynn Wright and Jodie Clifford. So the next story I've got here is about then inspiring others. So after a period of time working on the Gold Coast, I became more connected to what was happening nationally through various forums. So there was the Australian Coastal Society, but I also started to get more involved with Landcare Australia. And through that, I got connected to other young Landcare champions around the country. And this is when I think there was an anniversary for 25 years, and they developed a youth ambassador program. I was able to connect with other like-minded people, and that's when we decided to come together and actually create a platform which emerged into a national organization. We didn't intend to do this, called Intrepid Landcare. I think the story that I want to get across here is that when we decided to create a network for young change makers in land care, conservation, climate change, and sustainable agriculture, all those different banners and sectors that fall under the term more broadly land care, we realized based on our own experiences, there are young people everywhere, and young people are passionate, but they may not be necessarily visible in their community when it comes to community action. They participate in many different ways, online, like online forums, and then there's your face-to-face opportunities as well. And what we realized is that some of the barriers when it comes to youth engagement, yes, there can be time and transportation. Cost of living is now a massive barrier for people to allocate enough time to participate and do those extracurricular activities. But the other barriers that we found, particularly from our own experiences, but also having done a lot more research in community engagement and youth engagement, is that we found that it's really around confidence, for people to have the confidence in themselves to think that they can attend an event. And I remember when I found out about this, when we're doing this research, when we started to form Intrepid Landcare, we realized that if we're really going to significantly shift the dial when it comes to youth engagement for more broadly land care, let's not just about create more events. Let's create a leadership curriculum that will really change the landscape when it comes to youth engagement. Let's give young people the tools that we, potentially in leadership roles that we have at work, give them the tools for them to see themselves as themselves being leaders in whatever shape or form and in whatever capacity and wherever they are at. Give them the belief and the confidence that they, one, can do stuff that matters, and recognize that every action that they do, small, large, whatever, is that it matters. And these are the two kind of taglines that have consistently been used still to today, 10 years later. It lands for where young people are at. And it also helps distill down the real, appetite to not necessarily don't want to waste their time turning up to something that's not going to be impactful. So that's where that communications piece comes in, around communicating for what the impact that they can have wherever they are at. The pictures here is basically an example of what Intrepid Landcare looks like in action. Yes, there's that physical stuff where that environmental change. On the bottom left-hand corner, that's a large tree planting project on a private property in Gippsland. which is now our annual event, and they've got a plant and dance festival coming up at the end of July if you're in that region. So you can Google Gippsland Intrepid Landcare. But then there's also the things that young people like to do, which is hang out in nature together, strategizing in lots of different people's lounge rooms, having connection with some of our older and more wise land care champions. So Bill and Leslie Piggott on the bottom right-hand corner have been heavily involved with land care in New South Wales. And then in the middle bottom is also that the leadership retreats in itself. So that's what we did is we created weekend leadership retreats, and we did it in a way that was free and it was accessible for young people to apply and then participate for free, because we wanted to make sure that the leadership curriculum was available to as many people as possible and no matter your background. At the same time too, is we used to run also youth engagement workshops to actually train people in the industry, because we realized as an organization, we can only have so much impact. And that's why we're about building the capability and capacity across the movement around youth engagement. And 10 years later, what I've got here is just an example of the heart of the organization. And the reason why this youth-led organization is still running to today is that we have mainstreamed effective succession planning from local networks through to the national board. And at the very heart of the organization, and when we first started, we worked really hard at designing the organizational structure, and that's what you're looking at with the groundwork model. I have a QR code where you can go to download a how-to resource about that on the next slide. But we were able to then focus on the need and purpose and why we existed. And still today, sometimes people get confused around what Intrepid Landcare does, but the impact is in through individuals and organizations around building that leadership capacity. We need to nurture, I think, more of a joining culture. I particularly see in the millennial generation, and I just meet that millennial generation, a sense of wanting to be a founder of something when there's already existing organizations that are doing work. That founding culture is, I think, is fragmenting the environmental movement, and that's something that we really need to think about as well. And as part of the groundwork model, it really looks at the cultural parts of the organization, the strategic parts, and then the structural, the governance arrangements, and then the actual practical part, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And considering that this is a youth-led organization, it's important when we do strategy, working on the organizational strategy, that it's fun and simple. I hate sitting in those SWOT analysis workshops. I just roll my eyes and want to curl over and die. There's so many other creative ways to think about strategic planning when it comes to organizations. So what we can learn from my experience being involved with Intrepid, and I stepped away operationally wise and from the board, I think maybe 5 years ago, but they haven't kicked me out of the WhatsApp group yet. I still see lots of nice chats. The three key things here is that I came across a facilitation technique called Art of Hosting. If you haven't heard of it, please Google it. It was my mother who introduced me to it. The disability sector really has been transformed through this facilitation technique. It goes beyond the IAP2 model, which a lot of government people are trained in. As part of the Art of Hosting, there are two key facilitation methods that I use, and I actually use this in my personal life as well. The main one is the Four Folds practice, which is about ensuring that you're able to host yourself before you host others, and that really speaks to the importance around self-care and what you need yourself to be able to show up and shine and lead. The other one is co-design. I think a lot of people have been involved in co-design. I do think co-design is probably becoming more of a jargon term, because I've seen co-design and it's not genuine co-design. I would always encourage people to check Art of Hosting. There are lots of trainings around Australia and internationally. Then there is that groundwork model. which is really focused on the nature of organizing. So it was that example of that framework on the previous slide. I won't go into too much details with the nitty-gritty of the model, but this model, again, is being used by lots of environmental organizations increasingly, because you've got people like me who are pushing for different ways of doing strategy. And the other part of it is around mentoring, and I've got that times by 3. It could be times by 300 here, particularly working in the youth engagement space, but you can expand that out or even just cut out the youth working in engagement space. Everyone here on the call is doing some type of engagement every day, and how you participate in your networks and organizations, workplaces, even at home. I think that mentoring, yeah, that you can have organized structural mentoring, and then you can have organic mentoring. Our experience at Intrepid Landcare is really about that organic mentoring. And it is basically, I'm able to be on the other end of WhatsApp for a lot of young people, and then jump on from time to time and still do some online trainings to keep building up people's capacity and ability to do what they want to do in their communities. Not just myself, but lots of other, I guess, older people that are part of the movement. So,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, Naomi. We've just had someone that's having trouble seeing the slides. Just want to check that everyone else can see them.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Perfect. Okay. I did put in the chat a little link through, but sorry to interrupt. It was.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, great.
People can see it.
Yeah, there's just one person that's having a bit of issues, but I might be able to pop in some screen grabs as well.
All right. Okay,
Sorry.
great. Thank you. Now, this is the last story, and I know, we're coming to 12:35. So the last story is around empowering many, which reflects on my experiences working in the Pacific. I was trying to think, how do I share one story out of all the amazing people I got to work with, and feel so lucky to have been invited to participate and be part of some intimate community spaces. I wanted to share a story around Dorothea Tiki and also Amber Rowan. And this is a story really about using my position of power, because I don't have any power in these communities. I have no legitimacy, no authority, being an outsider. But my role is really about supporting those local leaders who are part of our program there, to really do that extremely hard work when it comes to working in remote places. So what you can see here is this was the group of local campaigners and advocates working on the Sing Up Blow Sawara campaign. And I've got the circles. You can see Ambrose on the left-hand side, and then Dorothea is in the front circle, sitting down in the white shirt. This story really comes from just thinking back at the enormous goal we had set ourselves with this project. So I was working on, and this is an incredible acronym, it was called PEUMP, the Pacific European Marine Partnership Program. And we're working in partnership with the LMMA network. So the locally managed marine area network, which are basically a network of amazing practitioners working in the community-based fisheries management space in the Pacific. And I came on board to assist with the coordination of information strategies, with a very ambitious goal of trying to reach 100% of communities in our project areas. For Papua New Guinea, we worked at a provincial level. I don't think you could have a strategy for nationally. It's just such a diverse country. At the province level, we're working in an area with 23 different languages, 3 different tribal groups, a population increasing at 4.5% per year. Population, I think, is around 250,000 people. If you think we also were doing work in Tonga, the population is 30,000 people. So you need very different, unique strategies for the work that we're doing. And we were focused in Vanuatu, Solomons, Fiji, and then at a provincial level in Papua New Guinea. Now, if you think, how are we going to reach 100% of communities in these areas where it's very remote, very hard to get to, very expensive to get around? The cost of diesel, oh my God, is incredible. The cost of a hire Land Cruiser per day is incredible. And so how are you going to create, and also radio coverage is intermittent. And if there is radio coverage, the generator probably doesn't work. Phone network is increasingly becoming more accessible. In the 4 years I was working on that project, every time I went, the internet was getting faster and faster. But still, the word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of communication there. So we designed our strategy really with that in mind. So we designed information products, digital, printed, online, and different media as well. That was locally informed. So it was all participatory, like informed. So it was a huge 18-month period around designing these information tools, culturally appropriate. And then we have a governance structure where we had technical advisors, probably people like yourselves, scientists and experts in the field to ensure that the information was technically correct. And then we had local campaign teams like the one that you're looking at here. Now, over a bit of trial and error of trying to find the right people, it was actually towards the end of the campaign. And I just thought, oh, I wish Ambrose and Dorothea was working with us the entire time, because what they had achieved in such a short period of time towards the end of the campaign project when we were working there, we had such an incredible success. And it really came to creating, I would say, the best team that we had, but it was really about thinking through what do they need for them to be able to do what they were going to do out on the ground. So making sure we had advancements, they had cash available in country, like just the most, sounds so simple, but so complicated at the same time. Particularly, this is in Papua New Guinea. And what I did with both Ambrose and Dorothea, we really worked towards our strengths. So this is what I'm going to offer, because I was only flying in and out and seeing them maybe, I don't know, probably 3 to 4 times a year. And in between those visits was probably 1,000 WhatsApp text messages. And then also listening to where they want to go post-project, because there's nothing worse than externals coming into these countries trying to fix the problem and then leaving. And then you've got project staff sitting around. So I wanted to work with them to ensure that they were going to walk into another job post-project. So what did we do? So what did we do together is that it was about almost a 6 to 12 month period working with them. We're able to build their confidence for them to develop curriculum for local level trainings themselves. They were able to manage logistics across the province when it comes to the extensive dissemination of information. And I can't underestimate the complexity for that. Then it was around coordinating of monitoring evaluation. And you can see here in the picture was Dorothea at the end of the program, just providing a simple using Google Maps, a Google Earth, to document where we had reached so people could visually see, particularly in a place like Papua New Guinea, where it's important to use visual cues for communications. And then it was around supporting the reporting and external communications, which they became increasingly proud of throughout their time. And then for Dorothea, she actually secured a great job with the Wildlife Conservation Society just as she finished a contract with us. Now, what was interesting in this, what I found, these are the tools that we were able to provide them, is basically upfront access to AI tools. Like working in Papua New Guinea, for Ambrose, I think he knew about 5 languages before English. It's not his responsibility to have to work in a Western world of doing these silly reports that go to funders. Sorry, it's true. But they were really proud and wanting to learn that part. That's the bit that they wanted, because they knew if they were able to do reports, they're going to be able to get a good job, mainly at another NGO. So that's, for me, I was like, yeah, here's Grammarly. Chuck your stuff into Grammarly. Here's Copilot. Here's ChatGPT. Here's Meta. But this is how you use the tools. Don't just put it in and then copy and paste and say, give it to me, because I know it's not local work and it won't make impactful communications. It's use your own or your unique ideas and use these tools to really strengthen those little bits, which is, grammar and those little bits that just will help people. Then it was around simple project management tools and using a platform that worked for them. So start small and then grow. And then it was around for me sharing the best practices and the things that I had learned in my career so far. So giving them access to the tools and the training that I had access to, ensure that they also not just had access to the PDF documents that I was sending them, that we would take the time to sit down and understand it, put it into their context for them to really build their confidence in working on the campaign. Now, through that period of time, we went from a campaign that was stagnant to a campaign that just accelerated. And that was because of their ability to not only take the opportunity for themselves, but there was a real sense of ownership for the possibility of what we were creating. And that was a sense of ownership for them that this was really their local campaign. And we were just here to help basically set it up and provide the framework for them to continue. The other week, I got a text message. Actually, it was a previous slide. Ambrose is working with some local school teachers who had traveled like 8 hours by public transport to get into town to pick up the information products. They then attended another training in around July last year that I participated in. And then they went back, they created a marine management area themselves, were able to fund a media field trip to go down so the local news could do a story on them. They could be on radio, the TV. And literally a couple of weeks ago, I got a text message that they have now created their own local organization called Sana Solwara Management. And that's now a opportunity for this village to get access to external funding as an opportunity to really boost that local economy, but using the framework of marine management. So there's still work that's still happening there. The work will never end there, that's for sure. So that now comes to the end of my presentation. Reflections and takeaways that I'd like to share is really distilled down into 4 things. One is the turning up. If someone you trust invites you to something, turn up, be curious, be courageous. And I always say be on time. That's always the hardest part. Then it's the pay it forward, particularly for us, women and women in positions of power. It's about not necessarily just about opening doors for people, but making it easier for the next person to step into that role. And I think if we do that well, any team will be able to, you'll be setting the team up for success. And then there's also the organizing models. There's probably a majority of you here on the call in probably a technical science role, but don't underestimate the power of upskilling yourself in these organizing models, because we are all creatures working in different governance arrangements and different frameworks. So I would say research, test, and improve different types of organizing governance models along the way. Because if we are more organized in our work and in our community, we're going to be more effective. And the other part about it is investing in yourself, whether it's books, podcasts, seminars, joining networks, even better, like yourselves, be part of a community and practice that self-care. Now here at the city, we are in a great opportunity to sponsor a Weller intensive program that will be happening here on the Gold Coast in October this year. And that's another opportunity where we're seeing it's going to be, if we can invest in women leaders and women and diverse genders, we'll be setting ourselves up when it comes to conservation into a better place. And I think that's something that I take forward into my role here at the city now, is when I am in a strategy role, what can I do around these 4 reflections to really scale up and advance the delivery of conservation? And that's basically what I'm focused on for, a little while ahead of me now. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Yeah. Q&A if we have some time.
We do have some time. That was brilliant. Thank you, Naomi. Did we have any questions? Oh, Erin's got her hand up.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I was just applauding, but that was really awesome, Naomi. I feel like you've found a balance between kind of what you can give and what you can take from working within these types of organizations, because sometimes, like you said, it can feel a bit transactional and you want to avoid that. I guess, how do you know, or how do you find the balance and when to step back and feel like maybe you're only giving and not feeling like you're getting back.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. There's probably two things that I've taken on, two learnings. Actually, it was when I joined this sea change to do the work in the Pacific. I found it actually quite hard to be working in a developing context every day and then sitting around committees and boards where we're talking about issues, but I just couldn't hear the issue anymore, because in my day job, I'm listening to these are communities with their corals are being bleached and they're losing their primary source of protein. And so I literally just had to just disappear. I just stopped volunteering at a local level, and I just maintained my actual connection with Landcare Australia, because I sit on that board in a different capacity and more of a strategic viewpoint, not in the weeds and on the ground. So that's what I did to manage that, because I did find it extremely hard. But then after working in a developing country context, or working in international development for about 4.5 years in the travel, so I think I worked out I was away maybe 3 months a year. That does take a toll. You can only do so much. I actually burnt out very badly in July last year. So about this time last year, I was really at the very end of what I could do, but hanging on with the project was only going for another 6 more months. I can handle it. And what I did at the time, I was overseas in Fiji running a regional workshop. And I just had to reach out to all my colleagues there and say, I actually can't do this. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I can't do this workshop. And it was hard for them to understand, but I just physically didn't have the capacity to keep doing what I was doing. And I actually ended up emailing all my mentors and just saying, hey, I'm burnt out. What do I do? I'm here for another 2 weeks. I can't get home. And I think it's reaching out to those people who have been in this position probably many times in their career to really give that advice. And that's something that I do take on. I find it hard because I get very enthusiastic about an initiative and I want to be part of it. But now it's just thinking through, if I'm actually not there, who is another person that can be there? And I think I like to play that role now. Is I would love to be part of this, but I actually know someone that's better, and I'll connect you with that person. And that means then you're not necessarily not being there, but you are being there. And it was a tip that I got from a mentor many years ago. It's the trick of being everywhere, but not anywhere. And that, again, is through that relationship building. And I think that's where you can do that give or take. I'm just thinking like what my partner Tom would be thinking right now by me saying it. He's, no, that's all bullshit. You don't do that. But there is a sense of honesty in what I'm sharing with you today, that it is a constant balance. And I do say probably there's lots of women on this call, but there's also probably a lot of women who are not mothers or not mothers yet, or earn to be a mother as well. So, and there's different caring responsibilities that we all play. And I think that's also important to just be really open and communicate with the teams and the people you work with around what we're dealing with right now. And I think, I don't know if that's something that we've inherited or adopted post-COVID, but I find it is becoming more common in the workplace around, hey, how are you going? But it's not just like a tick in the box. It's a genuine, how are you going? And what do you need for you to thrive? Or maybe you need to step back today. So those are some of the tips and tools that I use.
Amazing. And that's always such a great point to come back to as well. Being able to take care of ourselves and being able to uplift other people in the scientific community and in the wider community as well, especially into that communication space. If anyone did have a last quick question and wanted to come off mute, this would be the final chance. Oh, perfect. We might leave that there, but thank you so much for your time today, Naomi. That was amazing and inspiring as always. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time, and yeah, such an excellent chat and being able to uplift so many of the other voices out there as well. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining as well. Again, if you were interested in postgraduate to lie or know someone that would be, please reach out to Amisa. And anyways, otherwise, have an amazing rest of your day. And thank you once again, Naomi.
Thank you.